This Badgers basketball team is a wagon. They beat Purdue on the road. Tonje is a star. Let's talk about it on Wisconsin.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Today's episode brought to you by our good friends over at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can spend $5 to get $150 in bonus bets back if your first $5 bet wins. Today, we were talking about Tonje being a star, the Badgers beating Purdue. This is a huge win for the Big Ten standings, guys. Let's talk about, we always do the good, the bad, the ugly. Let's start with the good. I'll just really quickly, my goodness, this team didn't fold. Like this team.
No kidding.
On the road. Down
after an
7,
atrocious flagrant call.
Like they didn't fold. This team is, I'd say there's no team. There's very few situations I feel like this team can't find a way to come back from. I think this speaks to the team's depth, the team's veteran ability, the team's coaching. Hell yeah. My goodness, they didn't fold.
I was completely flabbergasted by that. I thought for sure that the game was over after McGee, the ridiculous ejection. And the good here is that we got a massive road win at Purdue in this conference to keep ourselves in the conference title race. It's absolutely fathomable now that you can look at the path to us winning a conference. We had to beat Purdue to be in that discussion. Losing this game would have been totally respectable and fine. It's a really tough game on the road at a very difficult place to play. But instead, we just came away with a win. We just put ourselves in position to actually be at the top of this conference. Yes, Michigan's still up there. Yes, we got to play Michigan State. Michigan plays Michigan State twice. There's a lot that can happen. The Big Ten is on the table. Tonje was an absolute machine. We'll obviously get into him, but I just think the good is that there have been so much discussion this year about how all of our wins in the conference have been against the lower half of the league, which is fine. Our losses have all been very respectable. We haven't had that signature win in conference. Well, that win came today. There is no better win you can get in this conference than at McGee Arena, one of the hardest places to play in all of the country. I'm from that town. I've been there many times. It is a cauldron in that place. And the mystique of Purdue basketball has only grown in the last few years, so it's gotten even worse. Unbelievable win today. Absolutely fantastic. I'm on cloud 9. Let's go Badgers.
How about dropping 94 points in McGee Arena today? In a win. It's not just a win. It's a convincing offensive display against a good team, which Wisconsin has been extremely good this season. But I think other than the Arizona game, like a lot of it's been against teams that other people may dismiss a little bit. Not this one. This is a really good Purdue team that they took it to in the second half. And they looked convincingly better, in my opinion. Like we definitely seemed to cause more issues for Purdue on the defensive end than they did to us. I thought we really started to pick it up in the second half, about halfway through, and just played much better defense overall. Now, he still gave up a few threes, but there was a cold streak that they forced when they separated early there and got that 10-point lead, where they just did a really nice job of stringing together stops against Purdue, which allowed them to get that separation and probably carried them home. Like if this game is tight, if they're only up like 3 or 4 with 3 minutes left, it may have been a different situation, because it would have been that crowd really would have been into it.
All right, let's shift to the mids. So we always do good, mid, and ugly. There's not much ugly when you go to McGee and you win by almost 10. He's dropped 90 plus and 58 in the second half. But I'll say on the mids, I thought the defense gave up too many open looks. Like there were I thought Purdue let us off the hook a little bit. There were missed threes inside. We got carved up. At some point, man, I think you got to help a little less against Braden Smith, because he's just probing. He's looking to pass. And I know that's difficult. That's way easier for me to say than it is to do. But he's looking to pass, and they found consistent open shots in the second half to the point where it felt like we had to keep scoring, which that's a tough spot to be in. Now, we were able to do it, but I think defensively, you can still see some of the warts on this team. For as much fun as this was, I thought there was a lot of really good looks for Purdue. And quite frankly, I thought they missed some threes that they normally wouldn't miss. So that's my mid.
Yeah, I will jump into that real quick because they did still shoot 45% from three in this game. So it's not like they had a substandard game. They actually shot the lights out pretty well from three. And we just kind of weathered the storm on it. But you're not wrong. Sorry, Rajiv.
But is it because
they had
I think it's because
they had a substandard. They had a substandard run in the second half where they did miss a lot of open threes. But yeah, the late in the game, every single shot they took was going in.
Mm-hmm.
We absolutely had to score. So I agree with that, Ryan. I definitely think that's one of my mids as well. My other mid I'm just going to talk about is John Blackwell. I think that today, the first half, he just kind of looked like he didn't get off the bus. He looked like he was uninspired. He looked tired. I will give him a lot of credit, though. I think he came out with a lot more energy and fire in the second half, knowing that he had 2 fouls already, knowing that McGee was already ejected, and he needed to play a really big role in the second half. And I give him a lot of credit. So that's why it's a mid for me. The other one I'll just have is I still think there are times offensively where we don't need to go down there and shoot within 3 seconds and take a bad shot from three. John Tonje did it a couple times. Even Max did it a couple times. Like, it's okay to run our offense and try to probe for good shots. I'm all for this pace. I'm all for the speed. But there are times when it was in one of their runs in the first half where I'm like, we're just giving them the ball back. Like, let's just calm down and take a good shot. We can generate good offense with the number of players we have and the number of outside shooters we have. We don't need to speed our way through a possession. So I would like to see that improve. But listen, very few things to complain about.
Yeah, I mean, mid is honestly a tough thing to say because the people who it's hard for me to look down the roster and be like, this person didn't have a great game. I think Blackwell's really the only guy that you look at like this. This was a somewhat substandard game for him. And I don't think that he was as locked in as we've normally seen him throughout the season, but I really thought carried us in that last 5 minutes. He made some really nice cuts. I thought the offense, quite frankly, was lights out in that last 5 minutes, but yeah, he really stepped it up late. But yeah, for the first 3 quarters of that game, he was kind of just out there. Like he really wasn't effective. He didn't even have his first 3 points until that 3, like midway through the second half, wasn't it?
Yeah, he missed an early layup, then he missed an open 3, and then he missed the 2 free throws, and then he got lost defensively. Then he had a bad foul. Like he had a stretch in the first half where I put it in the Discord, like it looks like he just woke up, like he'd been sleeping for 12 hours and he just kind of like rolled on the court. Now he made winning plays in the second half to the point, like he had a couple big shots. JB ended up with 11 points and really made a couple big plays down the stretch. Rajiv, I want to hit on your point quick, because I agree with your mid. I think the offense at times, it's a really tough balance when you're a really good shooting team to not fall in the trap of shooting quick shots, right? Mm-hmm. And there's a very fine balance there because it's easy to fall into that trap of we got to hit the post, but the way Purdue was defending the post, the way they were doubling it, even some of Tonje's shots, I think people need to be really careful with this, are really hard shots. Some of those step back threes are not high percentage shots. Tonje was just on another level today. Mm-hmm. That's not necessarily good offense. That's just a player elevating. And I don't know if you want to count on that. You have to continue to run a little better offense at times. But Tonje just went God mode today. Like, incredible performance.
I mean, we have to just take a step back and recognize what kind of a player we have. I mean, he's absolutely unconscionable at times. And the things that he does, let's also touch on the fact that he plays with such incredible confidence. He doesn't even care that it's a bad shot. He's like, dude, I'm still going to smash this right in your face. Like, he doesn't care. He's such a player, man. I mean, like, And we've talked so many times about how we can't ever seem to get Tonje and Blackwell playing really great at the same time. And this was sort of the case again. But man, dude, Tonje just knows when to turn it on. And he really has such an incredible swagger about him that, boy, I mean, you look ahead to the rest of the season, you look ahead to March, and I'm like, that's the kind of guy that can win you a ton of games when it matters.
Yeah, I kind of mentioned today while the game was going on, I really didn't think Purdue had an answer for him. And I think that's pretty much every team in the Big Ten you can look at. And it's kind of flawed in that way. They all have a weakness, like Wisconsin, the interior post defense. I mean, that kept them in the game. They just got chewed up on the inside. That guy just carved them up and kept them in the game by being able to get easy looks. And that's a guy that probably next year, winter, is probably capable of at least making uncomfortable a little bit. You just don't have a guy this year that you look at that can be capable of holding the point on the interior. But Yeah, Tonje was great. Like it was almost like, to get him that rest with like, I think he was up for like 5 minutes between the 10-minute mark and down to about 5. That was huge, because if we needed to lean on him the entire second half, who knows if he has enough in the tank left to get us down the stretch.
So a couple comments I want to get here, and then we got to talk about the McGee foul. Jay Jacobs says, Ryan, I respectfully disagree. If you want to win the game, that's all that matters. If Tonje is taking bad shots or going in, keep going. That's where I just disagree a little bit. Like, bad shots are bad shots. You still want better offense. I think another comment up here from Thomas Miller, but Ryan, you need that to win those types of games. You do need your best players to step up. Again, I think you can run better offense and still count on your best players stepping up, I think is where I would go there. We do have to take a quick break. We got to come back and talk about that foul. I know what I feel. I guess I'm from the facial reactions. I'm guessing what Rajiv and Justin feel as well. We're talking about that foul next. Locked On Badgers. First, a quick break for our friends of the show over at Factor Meals. Listen, if you know me, you know I eat like, I was going to say a caveman, but caveman actually ate pretty well probably. Like fresh meat, like fish, salmon. I don't know, man. I eat really poorly. That's why Factor Meals is here to help me be a better version of Ryan Harris in 2025. If y'all thought I was putting out content on my Cheeto diet, wait till I get on my Factor diet when I actually have protein, fueling my brains and my neurons are firing because I actually have real food inside me. That's what Factor is going to do in 2025. Great meal options, professionally prepared, never frozen, over 40 options, 8 different dietary preferences. If you need a bunch of protein, whatever it is, if you have allergies, Factor Meals is here for you. Head over to factormeals.com/lockedoncollege50off. That's factormeals.com/lockedoncollege50off. And you use that code to get 50% off the first box plus shipping. That's code LockedOnCollege50off at factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50off to get 50% off your first order. Okay, let's talk about that foul. Justin, why don't you lead us off in this? Kamar McGee, well, let's set the table. Everyone saw it, but Kamar McGee got called in the flagrant 2, trying to get around a screen. It was reviewed, which means flagrant 2 means you're kicked out of the game.
Yeah, I know intent's not part of the rule, but it almost feels like that's kind of how it was being looked at. Like, I looked at him. He's not even looking in the direction of the guy. It looks like he loses his balance and goes into him. And yeah, it didn't look great. Like, he clearly caught the guy where you don't want to be caught, but I just don't see that being like reasonable or excessive, because it wasn't like he was actively trying to do that. Now, we can argue some of the situations back in the Davison days where there were a couple of low blows involved there, where that was a little bit more of a, okay, that's a flagrant. I felt like this was really like it happened. There was nothing, no ill intent. It was not intentional. Like, it sucks. If you want to call a foul on it, fine, whatever, but there's no reason whatsoever he should be getting booted out of the game for this.
Let's just talk about the game state a little bit. And this is where it really drives me crazy, is officials need to understand what's happening. These are 2 of the top teams in the conference playing a game that absolutely matters for the Big Ten. It's not like you have to make – I've coached – I've reffed basketball before. It's a very, very hard sport to officiate because you have to blow your whistle immediately, unlike football where you can actually think about the call and before you throw the flag. Well, they had a time to think about this. They're sitting there looking at it. You cannot tell me that the best thing, that the right call is to kick a player out of a game in a massive game for both of these teams, and a player that everyone knows is obviously he's one of the best 3-point shooters in America. And you want it. First of all, I don't even think it should have been a flagrant 1. But if you want to call it a flagrant 1, that's fine. I can accept that. What in the world are these refs thinking when they're looking at this thing thinking, you know what? We got to kick him out of the game for accidentally kicking the guy in the nuts. Look, I understand it was a flagrant because the rule says it is. And you know what? If the rule says it's a flagrant, then tell me why Nolan Winters wasn't a flagrant at the end of the game when he's running ahead of the guy and he's wrapped up. That by rule is a flagrant foul. So listen, I absolutely think that's bananas. And I'm telling you what, we kudos to the Badgers for winning this game. Kudos for us not folding, as you mentioned, Ryan, in the first segment. Absolutely amazing. But that, frankly, is BS. You cannot make that call. And one of my best friends is a Purdue fan. We were texting throughout the entire game. And even he was like, that's crazy. Like, there's no way he gets kicked out of the game. It's just not okay, because you know what? What if that happens in a tournament game? What if that happens in a Big Ten championship game? Like, you can't make a call like that when you actually have time to sit and look. If it's a snap call, that's different. They made the decision to kick him out of the game. There absolutely needs to be clarity, and that has to be changed. It is unacceptable. Luckily, we got through it, but that's not fair, and we need to be done with it.
Go ahead, Ray.
I was just going to say that the part that really pissed me off, outside of everything you just said, was the game script. But these kids, these guys, these young men, you only get so many opportunities to play in McGee. You have worked your there's things I can't say on the show, but you've worked your butt off to be in this point, and we know the journey McGee has been on to get to this point, the work he's put in, 1,000 jumpers in the offseason every day, and he gets to play in one of the greatest, give respect to Purdue. That's a great road environment to play in, a great home environment they have. He has an opportunity to play on CBS. How many kids grow up wanting to play on CBS national television, ranked game on both sides with a ton of stuff on the line, and you're going to throw him up for that, which two things. Not only does that derive him or take that opportunity from him, which ticks me off, but it also starts to paint a picture of people will look at him a little differently, right? When you get thrown out for a game for doing something like that, that gets attached to your name. And he's not a dirty player. He's an awesome kid. And the way he responded, by the way, is a mark of his maturity, because a lot of players would have lost it in that moment, rightfully so. I was fuming on his behalf because he's a great young man. He's a representative of this university, and he was not intentional. There's no part of that was intentional, because I'll tell you this, that dribble handoff action happens so quickly in a game, you're not going to have time to intentionally line it up. You just don't have time to do that in that moment. It was just a bang play. He's trying to get around a screen, call the flagrant one. Do not kick a kid out of a game like that. That was ridiculous. Sorry, that was my rant there.
I mean, it needs to change. And you know what? This is the kind of stuff that needs to happen. We need to talk about these things. The officials need to correct these things, because it truly was unintentional, in my opinion, which means at worst, it should be a flagrant one, not flagrant two. A flagrant two, you have to be okay, I'm really coming to punch you where it matters. Mm-hmm. That's not what happened. That's ridiculous.
So my perspective on it is simply, if you look at it, everyone that was third party and objective said they disagreed with the call. And I thought that meant something to me. Both announcers did. You heard the guys back in the studio didn't think that it was. It's why is this so hard? It's pretty clear to everybody else that that it wasn't deserving of that. And yet you still throw it out there. What the heck? It's not that hard. We've been watching basketball for 30 years, games. You could tell when a guy should be booted from a game for a foul. When you put somebody else's safety at risk, that's when you look at it. Pulling a guy out of the air, or coming up upending a guy. Those are the type of situations where it makes sense. This is just ridiculous.
Well, let's go player of the game. And you're right, Rajiv. We didn't even really hit on it, but that last foul against Winter, he wrapped him up. He didn't make a play on the ball. That's an intentional. Period. Stop with the nonsense. It didn't hurt us, but that's an obvious intentional foul. Let's go player of the game, though. I think we all probably have thoughts on it. Let's go player of the game and maybe your runner-up, because I think there's some really interesting top threes here. Rajiv, we'll start with you on this one. Go to Justin, and we'll kick it around.
Yeah, obviously, Tonje's player of the game, 32 points, 10 of 15 from the field. Amazing. 6 rebounds to add. I thought a lot about the number 2, because I think ultimately for me it's Max Klesmit. 17 points and 6 assists, by the way, 6 assists. And it's not really so much the measurables for me on Klesmit. It's the things that he did, the way that he took over the game at certain times. He knew, because listen, like you said earlier, Ryan, Purdue was scoring. We needed to keep scoring at the end of the game to win that game. If we wouldn't have done that, they would have come back and won. Klesmit knew that. Klesmit was driving, taking very high percentage shots or getting to the foul line, right? And in order for Klesmit to do that, he's got to be playing with a lot of confidence. And that is, and by the way, he made his first shot today. That equals confident Klesmit. And yeah, so for me, I think all the little things that he did really contributed to the game today, and the measurable 6 assists, 17 points, fantastic game. Still only 1 of 6 from 3. And hopefully that continues to get better. But I think he put a lot of effort out there. He deserves it.
Yeah, it's Tonje for me to start. And then I would have Janicki actually second. And the reason why I say that is, we've seen Klesmit do this. Getting a big productive game like this from Janicki in a massive moment is such a huge deal. And it's not something that we can expect from him at this point. I expect Klesmit to go out there and have a good game in games. And in fact, I think we've all kind of looked at it this season and been it's kind of disappointing. We don't expect him to play at the level that he's played most of the season. So really the way I look at it is Klesmit definitely had a good game. And even that first, it was funny. He took that first shot Klesmit, and I'm like, I don't like the way that like it went in. It was pure, and I'm like, I still don't like it as kind of a fadeaway, like athletic looking three. Like you kind of see a guy put it up where it's just like, that's not a shot I want you taking. Like you're not in rhythm and your feet aren't set the way you want. But it went in, I'll take it because you've struggled to hit shots this season. And he played really well. I thought Klesmit, yes, the aggression and what we saw him attacking is exactly what I wanted from him all season, which is get to the rim, like give yourself some easier opportunities and put some pressure on the defense. And it was great today. He really played well going downhill.
Yeah, he had a good job getting in the paint. He was still 1 of 6 from threes. So it's still not a super efficient aspect from that, but he finished 5 of 10, hit free throws, had assists, was filling it up. I think the Janicki one is a good call. A lot of people have Janicki in here. I think it's interesting when you look at where Janicki's shots are coming from. Where did they come from? They came from the spot McGee vacated because McGee got ejected. They were corner threes, right? Which is in this offense, that corner three is just such a killer threat because of our ability to get in the paint and kick it. If you notice, a lot of our ball rotations end up either on the wing or in the corner because of how hard it is to catch up to the ball defensively when you're reacting to this offense that spreads you out. So Janicki really came into that McGee role and filled it, and he filled it incredibly well. So I would have him second. I would give a shout out to Winter as well, who played really well, especially in that first half. A couple big shots, a couple threes to kind of get us going and keep us from getting out of a funk. But I want to throw this out there, and we got to hit a break. So maybe we'll talk about this after the break. But the depth of the team, again, we talked about how deep this team is. You lost to McGee today, and you won on the road. Guys, like this team is deep. It's just deep. All right, we got to take a quick break. We're going to come back and talk about the depth of the team. Interesting question here that I'm going to ask these guys that came up in the chat. John Tonje, the best Badgers player since those 2014-15 teams. We'll get to that next, Locked On Badgers. First, a quick break for our friends of the show. And a quick second, as always, to say thank you guys for tuning in. Locked On Badgers, we got 568 of you here right now, which is absolutely incredible. Plus, whoever else is going to watch on YouTube, and hopefully some salty Purdue fans find it somehow. Today's episode brought to you by our good friends over at Yeah, they won't watch this. They won't watch this. Today's episode brought to you by our good friends over at FanDuel. FanDuel, again, is the number one source for all your sports betting needs. Futures, parlays, teasers, spreads. It's all over there on FanDuel, the official sports book of the NBA, which is now rolling towards the NBA playoffs and the finals. Baseball's coming up, official sports book of Major League Baseball. You know it's the official sports book of the NFL when that's going on right now. $150 bonus bet gets you, or if you bet $5, you get $150 in bonus bets if you win your bet. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Rajiv, it looked like you had something to say. Like,
I about kind of going back to the player of the game segment and the runner up. Who said we didn't have rim protection on this team? Carter Gilmore is rim protection, by the way. This dude,
our smallest guy, is the leading shot blocker on the team.
Let's just give a little love to this guy. Let's give a little more love to this guy because he's just like effort, heart, intensity, aggressiveness. Like you name an adjective, it describes the way Carter Gilmore's playing.
He's played really well. 2
really big blocks, like one late in the game, one in a very critical part of the game. Yep. And I just and that's all part of the confidence that Carter Gilmore plays with. The 1 3-point shot that he took today was not good. He didn't have his feet set. And honestly, that was the issue. And then it looked like one of the old threes. But
Winter actually taking quite a step too on the
I'm so proud of Carter Gilmore, and I know that we say that every time on the show, but once again, like it's not going down, it's not going backwards, and that's the thing that I wanted to mention. Like you saw him have a couple spikes. He's not going into more valleys. He's keeping his performance really high, which is something that deserves a lot of credit. Sorry for barging in there. I had to talk about.
No, you're good. It seems like every game we find a new reason to love him. Right? He's like a person that just keeps growing on you more and more. A Hill says, "Yo, Ryan, give my comment a shout out." I missed your first comment. I don't know what it is, but I'll give this one a shout out. A Hills. Thank you for jumping in as always. All right, let's do this. Best, and this is off the top of our heads, so there's someone we could miss. Is Tonje just this version of Tonje? This obviously he's not gonna have the best career since the 14-15 team, but is he the best Badger since I don't think so. My answer is no. I think of Ethan Happ. I think of Johnny Davis, who I would both have above them. I know other people might disagree with either of those. But he's in the conversation, which by itself is an incredible accomplishment. But I would say no to that one. And I think there's some recency bias here a little bit.
I think personally looking at it, I would say Davis is a better all-around player. I think that you could say Tonje is the better offense. He's a far more efficient offensive player than Davis was. But the rebounding that Davis had, and he was actually a pretty darn good defender, Like people, that gets lost on people, the secondary things that Davis did well. He wasn't an efficient scorer. Like that was the knock on Davis. Like he could put up huge totals, but he was kind of a chucker. Tonje tends to have far more efficiency in terms of his overall shots. He can still have a high scoring game on few shot attempts. That's not something Davis really did. But I think if you're really talking about it, Hap is hard to beat. Like he had so many statistical categories that he was good in, and he was such a good passer and an ability to even ball handle as necessary.
Let's not forget Hap's inability to make free throws in any kind of regular rate.
That's fair.
Look, the answer is yes, Tonje is, because, and look, I know many people, and Ryan definitely disagrees with me on this. And we weren't doing the podcast back when Johnny Davis was on the team. I was never a big Johnny Davis lover. And if you've listened to this show long enough, you know that about me. I just thought that there was a lot of things that he did that drove me absolutely crazy without cussing. And I think that, look, and there's things that John Tonje does that drives me crazy too, but John Tonje is so much more efficient. Justin, you said it right. Like the efficiency is there. And I don't know the numbers off the top of my head about what Davis did and what Tonje did, but I feel like, and the eye test tells me that Tonje turns the ball over less than Davis did, because Davis really got himself into some situations.
He's much lower usage.
Ryan's going to say he was the best player on that team. He got all the attention. He didn't have a better team around him, and I agree with that. And I think if you saw Davis on a better team, we might see a different Davis, and I might have a different opinion. So I do acknowledge that take. But I absolutely think that Tonje is the best player on this team since the 2014-2015 season, and I think he's only going to get better. I'm so happy for him in the way that he's playing.
That's a wild take. Love you to death. Davis was so people forget. That's the wrong way to say it. I think people undervalue the impact Davis had defensively. Davis was guarding guys like Jaden Ivey and playing him to the tee. Davis led the Big Ten in defensive rebounding. Like, Davis was also the only guy on that team that scored. If you took Tonje and put him on that team, and you took Davis and put him on this team with spacing everywhere, the way Davis could get downhill and score with teams
much more efficient,
was unable to double him or even help because they're shooting everywhere. The reason Davis was inefficient is because he was a sophomore that teams doubled. I just think Tonje, I love Tonje, and everything you said is true. Tonje's more efficient. He's also a 24-year-old man. Davis was a 20-year-old sophomore on the team without help. So I just think Davis had less help and did more all around, to Justin's point. But listen, the fact that we're having this conversation means guard hit it out of the park with Tonje, right? Like the fact that we're comparing him to a lottery pick who was an All-American and a Big Ten Player of the Year, and doing so honestly, like it's not a stretch to anybody. It's not a stretch to the point where you even think he is at that level or above it, is the fact that Greg Gard hit this out of the park. John Tonje is an absolute star. Mm-hmm. And the fact that we're having this conversation is validation of that. So while I would disagree, I think the fact that we're having the conversation is a reason to be excited.
Yeah, and I will say, like, you're absolutely right about it. And I do sell him short on the defensive side of the ball. He was a fantastic defender, and he is a far better defender than Tonje. So in that regard, absolutely agree. I don't want to take anything away from Johnny Davis's defense because it was lights out. And he, as far as anywhere he defended on the floor, he was really good. And we could use more of that on this team.
And to Jade's point, how lucky and fortunate are we just to have this season? What a fun season. What was the last season that was this much fun?
2015.
That's a long time. Yeah, maybe.
It is. I will say this. Is this the best passing team since 2015?
Ooh, that's a good question, Justin. I like that. I think you might be right. I mean, Crowell is a fantastic passer, and I think seeing the way the ball movement, and I will say I give credit to Kirk Penny and Steams by the offense that's kind of forcing that issue a little bit. But yeah, man, the ball movement has been really, really good on this team. Not as good, I would say, as that 14-15 team, because they didn't turn the ball over very much. And these guys still do turn the ball over quite a bit.
Well, that team was a freak show. I mean,
obviously. And yeah, this team is not that team. But yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good point. And some of the ball movement, I put in the Discord in the first half, the ball movement, boy, it's sexy at times, the way these guys move the ball. Man.
There's NBA passes happening on here. Some of the stuff. That one that dipped down to Tonje for the dunk, that was absolutely an NBA pass. Like, that's the stuff you see 2 or 3 times in an NBA game. You rarely see it in college.
So here's where, and Rajiv, you mentioned this too with Penny, here's where Penny gets a lot of credit for that. Like, passes are a lot easier when teams are spread out. Passes are a lot easier when teams have to respect the 3-point line because now you're closing out. You have those back cuts. But yeah, like Justin, to your point, like Crowell had an awesome pass today on the back door. Tonje had that incredible pass to Blackwell where I thought he was trapped. And if he throws that, if that's a turnover, we're yelling at him. What a silly decision. How could you try to force that? It's a lot of people that can, in Klesman included, McGee included, that can make a lot of nice decisions with the ball. Let's go big picture here. Illinois is next. This team can, I mean, I talked about it last week before the Purdue game. This team can win the Big Ten. Straight up.
Yeah, man. So first of all, the fact that Illinois and Oregon are home games now, which is our next 2 games this week. Obviously, there's going to be a good group going to the Oregon game next weekend. Wish I could do that. Illinois can be a bugaboo team for us. They really played us really hard at Illinois. They've got some really good players. I'm going to be doing a preview show about that. That's going to be a dicey game, even though we're at home. But we're at home, and then really the game that you look at now on the schedule is at Michigan State. That game is going to be absolutely brutal. If we can find a way to win that game, boy, I'm telling you, we are going to win the Big Ten. Can we win the Big Ten? Yes. Will we win the Big Ten? I don't know. Michigan has 2 losses. Everyone's schedule is really difficult, but man, like I am just so happy that we're in this race again. And I'm just going to put this comment up here along with it. This is from Tyler Strieber, good friend of the show. Justin, is guard's job safe now? You better believe it.
Yeah,
what a season this man.
Listen, for like the last 3 weeks, Rajiv's listened to me say that I've been giving him credit on our show, and flat out said, I'm like, I will be critical of him when I think he's doing a bad job, and I'll give him his credit when he does well. He has clearly done an incredible job this season. The things that I was concerned about coming into the second half of the season do not appear to be affecting us. We're 20-5 now heading into the stretch run here, where there's a chance here. The team looked really strong, and the depth has clearly helped this team. But they have a chance to make a run here. Like they could end up putting themselves in the conversation for a 2 seed, which going into the NCAA tournament, you want to have the simplest route possible to get deep into the tournament. Wisconsin would love to be a 2 seed.
They will be a 2 seed after today because if you weren't watching before the game, the committee, the chairman of the committee actually came out with his official, they actually released sort of a mid-season look at the Sweet 16 picks, and we were a 3 seed, which means the committee clearly values the Arizona win and other wins we had early. Now we haven't had the big in-conference win. Well, we had that today, so that obviously projects us probably to the 2 line. Our next 3 games are at home, right? Illinois, Oregon, Washington. If we win all 3 of those games, we go into March at 13-4 in conference with a game against Michigan State and then 2 winnable games against Minnesota and Penn State. I can now see a path to 15-5 easily. Maybe even if we get 16-4, if we win out, we're winning the Big Ten, or we could sneak up to the 1 line if we win out.
Yeah, I think it would be a late one if that was the case.
And I don't think we'll win the Big Ten either. I know you kind of squinted at that as well. Michigan not only has a head start on it, but they have compared to the other competitors, they have a relatively easy home slate. A lot of their tougher games are at home coming forward. I know we talked about this, but their tougher games are at home. Like we still, that's why winning today on the road was so big though. Like I didn't think we would win today. I thought this would be a loss. I mean, I'm obviously stoked to be wrong. And that changes the equation. When you win a tough game on the road, but like you said, Michigan's only got 2 conference losses. So they already have the head start, which makes it tough.
Speaking of which, we talk about how negative I am, and I was the only one out of 3 of us that said I thought we were going to win today.
You did.
Yeah, you were pretty negative though.
That's fair.
Like, let's be fair with that too. A couple of quick things in here. We hit on Janicki, Stephen Crowell today. A couple people talking about Crowell. This is from Gabe Ramos. Crowell didn't do anything today. It didn't even matter. That's how good the squad is. Guys, thoughts on Stephen Crowell today?
He was the better defender against Kaufman. I thought that he held up much better. Winter struggled with the physicality. He's still not strong enough. Gilmore was pretty solid on the interior, but Crowell, to me, it just looked like he was mostly focused on doing the dirty work today.
So for me, Crowell had a fine game. I'm not bothered by his point total because he was doubled constantly when he touched the ball. He's not going to score a lot of points. He hit his only open 3 that he took. Give him credit for that. He did only have 1 rebound, which surprises me when I look at the stat, but he had 3 assists. I think it was a fine game. It was a forgettable game for Stephen Crowell, but ultimately we won, and he didn't make any massive mistakes. It's not like he took a bunch of shots that he missed. He only took 1 shot and he made it. I mean, like, I'm okay with Crowell. I know there's a lot of people that were really down on him today. To me, it was a fine game.
I'm right with Thomas Miller on this one and kind of with you as well. Thomas Miller said, thought he did what he needed to do, passed it well, didn't force. I thought he was fine. He wasn't great. This wasn't like vintage. Like, he was a C+. And we've seen the F version of Crowell, like against Illinois. We've seen the B+A type version. He wasn't that, but he was fine today. And honestly, I would ask the people this who wanted more shooting from Crowell or maybe a little more points. Would you have rather had Tonje take less shots to give Crowell more? Or would you have rather had Blackwell or Janicki the way they were shooting? I think it worked fine. It worked fine. He wasn't great. And we also know he's going to struggle against matchups with big athletic centers. Like, it's just not a great matchup for him. It is what it is. Any last thoughts, guys? Anything that we missed? Anything else last rounds that you wanted to hit on?
The one thing that I wanted to say is we just played at McGee Arena, which, as you've heard me say many times, the hardest place to play in probably the country. Right here. This, that I'm holding up the number 3. That's the number of turnovers we had today. 3 turnovers at McGee Arena is absolutely spectacular. If you play that kind of efficient, ball-controlled type of offense and you don't make mistakes like that, 3 turnovers at McGee Arena, I would have bet my house that was never going to be possible. So kudos to the Badgers for that. What a fantastic win. I'm on cloud 9. Nothing can bring down my weekend now. Let's go.
Yeah, Ryan, I think you said it in the Discord. This team, if they play like this offensively, they can beat anybody in the country. Now, there's a couple of big kind of monoliths running around down in the South right now in Auburn and Alabama that are just wagoning everybody right now. So they're going to have to keep up this type of efficiency if they want to make a really deep run and do it. But there's anything's on the table with this team if they play well, because they are one of the more efficient teams offensively in the country. And it comes down to they just don't turn the ball over. Like that's a big aspect. They're playing faster, but they haven't appreciably gone up in turnovers, which is a big deal for this team.
Yeah, it's a good point. Like they've increased tempo while maintaining a level of efficiency. Normally those two things are difficult to do. Normally the faster you go, the less efficient you start to get, but you make up for it because you have more possessions. To increase possessions while maintaining efficiency is why this offense is elite. Bo Dragan says Tonje saved guard. I would argue guard saved Tonje. They saved each other. Like Tonje, look at Tonje's stock coming into the season.
This is not the Tonje that's played at any of his other stops. There's been a cohesive addition to both player and coach, because Tonje is a much better version of what he's ever been.
Yeah, we talked about it before the year. Tonje, pretty universally, most people in Badger fandom, and I would argue some of the coaches and the Badger staff too, thought Amos was the biggest get in that portal class. It wasn't Tonje. Question here from Badger for Life 48. Finish on this one. Is this guard's best team under his tenure? I would say, listen, remains to be seen. Like, March still has to happen, and as much as Rajiv and I talk about how much the Big Ten regular season matters, March also matters. I think we all realize that. I think it has the potential to be, though. Obviously, he brought those 2 Sweet 16 teams, those Koenig teams.
What was our record in the Davis year? 24-6 or something like that?
We won 22 games, 23 games. I think this team is probably better than that team, but that was a low.
I'm trying to just remember from a flat-out record standpoint. They're in play for it being his best record ever.
Can I just ask both of you, like, based on today and what we've seen and the offense, like, do you feel like the ceiling on this team is Final Four?
If they're playing offense like to this level, yes. But I don't know if they can be in this level of efficient, all the way through the tournament playing in a neutral
court all year.
Huh?
They've done it all year.
No, they have been. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that. It's just until you see it, it's hard to say. Like I think that they're definitely capable of playing to this level. So it's a possibility. So the ceiling, I think has to be Final Four. I wouldn't say that that's the expectation. No. It's not like 2015 where we're like anything short of a Final Four is a failure.
I think ceiling's an interesting conversation, because are we talking realistic ceiling, or I don't think they play defense well enough to get to the Final Four. I'm just going to be straight up. There were so many open looks today from Purdue, and a lot of that action wasn't that crazy. It's just Braden Smith getting downhill because we couldn't guard the perimeter, and they kicked out to open shooters. Like, better teams, not better teams. Purdue's really good. I don't want to discount that, but we're not going to score 90-something every game when it gets to grind season. And I don't think our defense is good enough for me realistically to say Final Four. I think it's an Elite Eight. And if you get to the Elite Eight, with the right matchup, you can shoot your way into the Final Four. But I would say ceiling's an Elite Eight team because I don't think the defense is good enough consistently.
Fair. I think this team's the way they're shooting. Look, one thing that happens in the tournament every year is you see the whistle start to blow really quickly, very early. And I think we could get some foul trouble, and then who knows what happens. But I think that at the matchups, like if we play in Milwaukee, which could be really beneficial for us, if we come out west, which would be great for me because we tend to do well out west too, anything can happen. And that's just ultimately where I think it is. Like this team has the capability of winning 4 games in the tournament based on what we've seen today and what we've seen all year for really.
What I will say is that looking at this team, and part of the failure of the Big Ten teams in general is that they play typically a more of a grind physical basketball style that doesn't play well in March because the games are ref different. And this Wisconsin team is set up better to play in that type of situation than past iterations have been, which is they have a much better chance of getting into a shootout with a team and coming out ahead, which is not something that majority of the teams since Gard took over were capable of. And that even a lot of the teams under Bo Ryan weren't capable of doing.
Hunter says this team beats JMU. I agree. I 100% agree with that. Jason says he agrees with Justin here. Trevor says this deep could still come around with Wemby, Gilmore. Anything is possible. I think we know who this defense is, though, at this point of this season. I just don't think it's consistent enough. But this team can shoot, man. We'll wrap it up there. We're already 40 minutes. And thank you, everybody, tuning in. When you're done here, go check out Locked On Big Ten over on the Big Ten channel. All the latest stories over there from the conference as a whole. We will talk later on Wisconsin. Appreciate you guys so much.